But speaking of butts and seats, we've had AMC and Cinemark report earnings in the last week. So again, we get to go back and take another look to see what, if anything, has really changed, talking about all this kind of stuff, where theatrical revenue comes from, how we come up with these numbers, that Ant-Man needs to do this, or Creed needs to do that, or something along these lines. And I'm going to pull this up real quick, unless you have anything else you want to discuss, because the doorbell might ring in a second. My dogs are about to go nuts, I have a feeling. So I'm just
Oh, the
gonna
only thing I
caution
would say
everybody.
is when it comes to butts and seats, just don't do it like Thor did, okay? No bare butts and seats. We'll stay away from that.
Yes, please. All right, let's go over here and pull up. Start with this one first. This is AMC. Okay. And they kind of give you a little precursor down here on the screen. 950 theaters, that's globally. 10,500 screens, that of course is globally as well. When we're talking about the screens, about 7,500 to 8,000 of those screens are here in the domestic market, US and Canada. The other 2,500 screens are abroad through various countries, Europe, South America, so on and so forth. So we always look at AMC because they have the biggest single global footprint in the industry. So like we talk about with this, they have, like I said, 7,500 to 8,000 screens here in the U.S. Let me give you an idea of what that means. Let's go back here real quick to the numbers just to kind of show you. Okay? Let me pull up the full weekend chart. Look at the number of screens, or theaters as they call them here. 4,007 screens for Creed 3, 3,800 for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Cocaine Bear, 3,500 screens. Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, 1,700 screens. Jesus Revolution, 2,500, so on and so forth.
Hey, and real quick, I know completely unrelated, but as you're looking, people, if you look at that per theater revenue, there's some stuff to see in that chart. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, indeed. But when you look here, okay, and you look down this list, you've got about maybe, if you add up all the big numbers here, you've probably got close to about 25 to 30,000 screens or so just represented in that top, say, 10, okay, of all the movies out there. Then it drops precipitously. You got a couple hundred little screens or a couple of dozen screens here or there.
Right.
AMC is responsible for a quarter of those screens, is AMC theaters. So, I mean, they're the big kid on the block, right? So that is where I'm going with this. So when we look at the AMC numbers, this is what's going to give us the most up-to-date information possible, and the most accurate information. And of course, as I promised, there go my dogs in the back.
Hey, you've got a Ring doorbell, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I was hitting the button. I was hoping it was working.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you would. So this is Cinemark. This is the second biggest theater operator, okay? But I want to start here with AMC. And you've heard us talk before about AMC theaters in terms of kind of their rental agreements and their revenue sharing. But as we look at this chart here, Pro, I tell you what, let me go take care of the yapping dogs real quick. Walk everybody. This is the fourth quarter
Jonas,
report.
can you get the dog yelping sounds ready so that we can sabotage the channel? Jonas, get the dog yelping sounds ready. Thank you.
Woof.
Well, the kids ordered pizza, and I knew that as soon as I was like, I know it's going to happen. As soon as I get to the next topic, the doorbell's going to go off, and that's exactly what happened. So,
and with that, I will retreat. Leave you gentlemen to it.
And then the dog smelled the pizza, and then the kids smelled the pizza, and all chaos broke loose.
All right, so let's get to this. This is the AMC chart. And just to kind of give you a first cursory overview of what has changed, we've got year and quarter ended December 31st for 2021 and 2022. So let's look at the state of theatrical exhibition. It's getting a lot healthier. If we kind of look at this from a wide 30,000 foot view here. So December 31st, 2021, for the year at AMC theaters, the attendance in the US market went from 91,000 butts in seats to 141,000 butts in seats at the end of 2022. Now, you'll notice in the quarter that kind of dropped off a little bit, right? We see in 2021, 40,000 butts in seats from October 1st through December 31st, and 33,700 butts in seats for that same quarter last year that we just ended. So what happened there? In the fourth quarter of 2021, there were a few more bigger movies that showed up, even though some of them weren't that great. Okay, but of course, Spider-Man.
Also, whoever decided to put the chronology in reverse. I despise this individual who set this chart up. Please, in the future, put 2022
No, I
behind
know. Well, in
2021.
financial reports, they always want to
I
put the
know, I
latest
know.
information to the left, so it's the first thing your eye sees.
I know. We switched to Japanese for just a moment when we do this.
Average ticket price. Again, this is AMC Theaters. $11.16 for the year ended for 2021. And for the year ended 2022, $11.62. For the quarter, though, look again, because this is where it gets really funky. So for the whole year, just to show you how fast inflationary pressures advanced at this
I wonder
point.
what it is this quarter. I wonder what it would be now. Are we up to 1250, you think?
Well, here it is right here. 11.16 was the average for 2021 for the year, but at the end of the fourth quarter, that had risen to 12.22.
Yeah, I wonder now where we're at. Because
easily more. Oh, you mean now? Yeah, easily more than that.
Yeah. 3 months later, I don't sense that it's slowing down at all.
No, it's very unlikely that it will be slowing down. It's only going to get more and more. Now, it's going to crest at some point, maybe the next year or two, and the accelerated growth rate that it's had is going to abate some. But it's going to continue like everything else inflation does. It's just going to keep getting more expensive. But we've had some very quick growth in the last 2 years.
So, Valliant, we don't normally do this, but we've got a super chat that is extremely timely that just came in. Let me toss this over to you, and let's go ahead and answer this because I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about right now, and then we'll get the rest of the super chats at the appropriate time. But explain why other writers, other vloggers, other sources of information about this don't cover this the way that you do, like we're doing right now.
So from Doug Burton for 5, thank you so much. Valiant, how come nobody takes the box office haul divided by the average ticket price to estimate the total tickets sold as a metric? I can't say that nobody else does it, but I agree, I haven't really seen it. The closest you're going to get, though, is from the numbers. They do have, if you look at their historically, like average ticket prices versus, tickets sold, and you get butts and seats. The problem is, I haven't seen them update those numbers since 2019. And the reason for that is because the numbers uses the data report from the National Association of Theater Owners.
Or as we like to call it, NATO, which makes it sound much more important and powerful. Correct. So we'll just stick with NATO from now on. We're getting this from NATO, ladies and gentlemen.
So what we know now from what we've seen from right there, $12.22 average ticket price. Now remember, that includes old reruns of Jaws and The Godfather. That includes 9 a.m. showings of Minions: Rise of Gru with 30 kids in the audience. So ticket prices that are 25-30% cheaper than adults going to see Minions: Rise of Gru at night, because most kids go see kid movies during the day when it's cheaper versus nighttime when the adults go. So that's $12.22 average ticket price. So we do try to do that here. I mean, it's hard to keep up because even over 2022, we were chronicling when the average ticket prices for like Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness, and they were saying that those average ticket prices were, and I'm trying to remember right now, let's say they were around $13 per ticket opening weekend, right, versus when we got to Wakanda Forever, we were looking at average ticket prices that were 5 to 6% higher in the same year, just 5 months later. And then we got to the point where it's like where we're at now with Ant-Man's average ticket price on its opening weekend, according to intelligence, as reported by Anthony DeAlessandro at Deadline, $14 a ticket. It was $13.98, I think was the exact. So year over year, we went from a high 12s, average ticket price for the Doctor Strange movie, and then 2 Marvel movies later, whatever it was, we're at 14. I mean, that's a big jump in a year. That's 8% year over year. What have they been talking about with the CPI is? Year over year is 8%. And ticket prices are inflating faster than that. If you go back to 2019. So
would you say that it is a little bit more complicated because if you have a movie that is more dependent on international box office,
sure,
that percentage is actually going to be a little bit lower?
It can be. International inflation has not precipitated at the same rate that we have here in the States. And that's also the reason, but it kind of works as a funky opposite, because even if inflation hasn't been as bad maybe elsewhere, in some places it's worse. But then what you have is a strengthening dollar, and that's why you've heard us talk. We cover earnings calls, FX drag, right? Foreign currency exchange drag. I'm going to show you that here on these theatrical reports.
Yep. So back to those then.
Yeah, let's go back to those. So let's see. Let me go back and pull that up. Let me pull this comment. Oh, thank you very much. All right, let me go back.
Thank you, Douglas, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Douglas, for
very timely.
Sure. Thank you. Let's see. I might have gone the wrong way. Let me make sure I have. They have two sets of pages in here, so bear with me. I got to scroll back up to it because I kind of goofed it. But this is a consolidated statement. I'll show you this one first. This is consolidated for revenues and for exhibition costs, okay? And this is, I want to make sure I'm grabbing, yeah, they have one. This is the total. This is the aggregate for the quarter. So this would include, I just want to be clear to everybody. This is AMC Theaters. This is the aggregate for the globe. This is everything. There's another page in here. I've got to go back and find it. That breaks down, and this is why I love to use AMC. Not only are they the biggest, which means they're the best bellwether metric to grade the whole industry by, but they also have very detailed breakdowns in their financial reports. And we can really see clearly. There's another page I'll bring up in a minute that is U.S. and Canada, domestic market, segregated from the international side. So you can see when you hear me talk about box office revenues, and I say, well, they got this much of the domestic haul in rentals. They got this much from international on average. This is basically where the numbers come from. And this is also where companies like Deadline Magazine use the same kind of numbers here, plus their industry experts. They all come to basically the same conclusion. This is a good bellwether. So on this end, if we look here.
Valiant, real quick, too, would you say that this is quite different than the level of specificity we would get from a company like Disney when they release their financial information?
Disney is one of the worst when it comes to releasing information, financially speaking, in terms of breaking out theatrical revenue. Yes, that's a great question.
The reason I say that is because a lot of people, you're pulling in well over 1,000 for these live earnings reports. And so people may have tuned into Disney and have one idea of what these are like. And then you look at this and you're saying, oh my gosh, they've got food and beverage costs.
Right.
That's nothing at all like what I witnessed with the Disney stuff.
Well, and that's a great point, Pro. So let me stop and address this real fast. And that is that if you look at Disney, because again, they have so many different arms, theme parks, resorts, hotels, cruise ships, live sports on broadcast networks versus Paramount. Paramount has a TV station. They have some cable channels and they make movies. Paramount doesn't have theme parks. They don't have cruise ships. Paramount, when they do their financial earnings reports, we get a line item every quarter that says theatrical revenue. It's not lumped in with third-party distribution. It's not lumped in with anything else. Disney takes theatrical revenue and they consolidate it. They smash it in with all distribution. Everything goes in there.
Which is really funny, by the way, the idea that you would be big enough that you would take all of your theatrical and consolidate it with something else.
That's how they hide problems, like Marvel failing, okay? But here, okay, with AMC, this is the great thing. I can go to AMC's financial reports every quarter, and then I can go back and I can look at Paramount. I can look at Comcast Universal, which also has a pretty good breakdown. And I can match numbers up, and I can say, oh, look at that. I can look at all the Paramount stuff that got released that quarter in the box office haul from day 1 to day 90 in the calendar quarter, and I can go look at the AMC report, and I can say, you know what? Well, I'll be damned. Those rentals line up pretty darn good.
That sounds almost like you're actually investigating and acquiring data.
Financial analysis.
My gosh, I should call the Access Media and tell them about this new thing you've discovered. Holy cow.
So let's do this. I had a notepad where I had written this out before, and of course, busy weekend, I lost the damn thing. So let's look at this real quick. We're going to look at 2022, and what I want everybody to do is look at that top line there, folks. See, that says admissions. Those are tickets that we sold to people that put butts in chairs and watch movies all during the year. That's $561 million right there in admissions for the quarter. For the quarter ended on December 31st. For the year ended, it was $2.2 billion. Of that $561 million, we can go down here. Operating costs and expenses, folks. Here we go. Watch the Valliant magic. This is not hard. It's just math. You just got to know where to look for the data, folks. And everybody in my audience I know is smart enough to do this. You don't need me. Please keep watching my channel anyway. $270 million in that same quarter for what? Film exhibition costs. This is a pure, straight line item of rentals. This is what AMC Theaters and CEO Adam Aron and company and the stockholders of AMC wrote a check back to Disney, to Sony, to Universal, to Paramount, to Lionsgate, to whomever out there that put movies in that fourth quarter. They got back $270 million from AMC Theaters who rented their films. So, Pro, have you already done the math on this?
Oh, no, I apologize. My wife had stepped in to see if I needed anything. So
no problem, folks. So watch this.
I had looked away for a moment.
I want everybody out there, you can pull out your iPhones and do this with me. This is great. Here we go. 270 divided by 561.3.
Survey says.
Okay. That's 48% roughly. So 48% of the box office of the total. This is global. Now, this is key. Watch. Global box office, right? 270 divided by 561.3. 48.1%. So of all the box office that came in, 48.1% of the total was paid back on average to Disney, to Sony, to Universal, to Paramount, to Lionsgate, so on and so forth.
Okay, pause and let's clarify. Does that mean then that the theater chain held 52% or approximately 52% of the ticket sales for themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
And not entirely themselves, but that portion did not make it back. So in the U.S.
So next question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was simply going to say some of that, and again, because we have international in here, but guess what AMC gives us? Like I said, they give us domestic versus international breakdowns on another chart in this report. We're getting to it.
So
some of those international fees go to taxes and other things in other countries.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Does that 52% that's held by the theater, does that include the taxes, or does the studio also pay taxes above that for their profits, and therefore they receive even less of a percentage back?
On the studio side, on the distributor
side,
I
should say.
Yeah, I can't speak to what they are paying. But let's take, for example, our friends out there watching in the EU or the UK or whatever, where some of y'all might have like a VAT, right? A value added tax. So if you walk in and you're paying $10 for your movie ticket, it's probably more, okay? And your VAT is, what's the VAT out there? Like 17%, I think. $1.70 of that comes right off the top, goes to the government.
Right.
So I can't tell you that the theater is, might it be buried in a line item down here in operating costs? It may. You got food and beverage costs, operating expense, excluding depreciation and amortization. It could be in there for some of the foreign things. Most of that's going to be just running the theater. There could be some other things in there, but generally speaking, any kind of tax like that, I'm not talking about income tax. We're talking about like a sales tax or a VAT or something like this, something that is owed particularly a foreign government in this case. That usually comes off the top. Like, if you have a retailer here in America and you sell a $10 widget in your store, somebody pays another dollar in sales tax, you're not reporting the sales tax as income to your business. That's just coming off the top and you're sending it along to the taxing agency. It pretty much works the same way here as far as my understanding goes.
Right.
Yeah. So let's scroll down and let's look at the actual breakdown here. And I know this is a little bit more in the weeds than we usually get on the live show, but this is important, guys. This is
let's say this too, because the question before was about how do we determine which movies are financially successful and which ones are failures.
Yep.
So is it fair to say then that when a movie is released right now, that it's bringing in 48%, and perhaps we should start using that, be very specific, start saying 48%, but that a movie brings in 48%, and then what you have to do is you have to take the production budget, and then what are we doing now? Are we saying that we typically double that production budget, or we add $150 million for advertising, and then we recognize that it has to make back an amount that is divided by that 0.48 or multiplied by that 0.48 in order for it to reach the profitability?
The total budget, which would include production and marketing. So in the case of
and the marketing, that's what I'm asking. How much are we assuming that the marketing is for these movies now?
Depends on the movie. Something like a Marvel movie, they're spending at the bare minimum $100 million a pop. probably
Right.
closer to 125 plus. We've seen some
Yeah,
go
yeah.
as high as 150, 200 plus.
And I'm
Spider-Man
just
No
doing
Way
this so
Home.
we can. Yeah,
Spider-Man No Way Home was 240 million in marketing.
right. And that's why I think Ant-Man Quantumania may actually lose more money than what we were talking about earlier. That thing
Yeah.
had a Super Bowl commercial. They put a lot of effort into making sure everybody knew about this, beginning of Phase 5.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But let's look at this real quick because I don't want to
Mhm.
stay on the numbers too long because I know people are getting glazed over out there. We're trying our best here, but this is important stuff.
We can make them dance. We'll put them in Comic Sans. You just don't even know all the tricks we can do with these numbers. Hang on.
So here's the actual breakdown, folks. Okay, this is how it works: domestic versus international. Okay, and again, God bless AMC for doing this. And I'm going to tell you something about Cinemark, something that actually the CEO Adam Aron brought up on the earnings call for AMC. He was bringing up Cinemark, comparing AMC's numbers to Cinemark's. And I do have to correct a little something that he said. We'll get there. But hang tight. Revenues, here we go. US, of that 660 million, whatever we just calculated, the 560, whatever the last number was. Okay, folks, here you go. Same thing. Let's make it easy. We have a direct line item straight up for film exhibition costs right here. So in the United States, okay, the US domestic market, 412 million. 212 million went back to theaters' pockets. So we're going to take our 212, we're going to divide it by 412.6, and we're going to come up with 51.38.
Okay.
That is 51.4%, basically. It was the domestic revenue share. That was the rental, the average rental that went back in the fourth quarter.
That went back to the distributor, or that was held by? Okay.
51.
So the theater held about 49.
Yes.
Okay.
And theaters keep more, or excuse me, the studios tend to get back more from the domestic side than they do internationally because of the whole tax, foreign issues, other
Sure.
things of that nature. If you look right next to it, you'll see in that quarter, look at the international. Do the same calculation. Take your $65.9 million that was paid back by AMC from its international operations to the same Disney, Paramount, Universal for whatever movie, okay? Divide that by the 169.3 on that top line, you get 38.92%. 38.92% was the average international rental.
So dramatically worse.
Yes. So this is why I always tell people, if you just look at a straight bucket of money, Ant-Man did $500 million at the box office. Okay. What was the breakdown? If you have a movie that is more heavily loaded towards the international side of things, then that means there's going to be less revenue coming in than a movie that is more heavily loaded to the domestic. Let me give you the best example I can that everybody will know right now. Top Gun Maverick, Avatar 2. Top Gun Maverick was roughly 50-50. $720 million domestic, 720, 30, 40, 50 million international. What was Avatar 2? 650 million or so it's at now domestically, but 1.5 billion international, right? Sounds like it's a huge divide, and it is, but a big chunk of that comes from China, all this other kind of stuff. Also,
Well,
obviously, Avatar 2 also costs substantially more to make than Top Gun Maverick.
And the bigger the chunk comes, okay, so let's make this a little bit more complicated. The bigger the chunk in international that goes to China, right? So the bigger the audience is in China,
Correct.
the more that's going to drop because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but China, I believe, is somewhere around 20% comes back
20
to the
to
distributor.
25%. Right. And there
Right,
are,
so
there
it's
are
really bad.
There are no Chinese theaters in any of these financial reports because obviously a company like AMC and Cinemark are not allowed to own
Right.
a theater in China. So none of this would be China.
Yep.
Yep. That 38%.
So then the international is
average,
actually worse than what we're reporting then because of the China.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
And that's why
I'm with
usually
you.
when I cite international, you'll hear me say ex-China, meaning excluding China, because that makes a big difference. Like if you take China out of Avatar right now, it's, I think, it's basically Spider-Man No Way Home. Avatar 2 has made Spider-Man No Way Home money because Spider-Man No Way Home did not have China. When you add China back in, you get Avatar's numbers now.
Yeah.
So,
all right, well, we've
Spider-Man had
just
a much
revealed the
bigger
magic
share.
now to everybody.
That's
The audience now knows the magic formula that we've been using for the past year to explain all of this. So
now, real quickly, one of the things I want to bring this up because I know there's going to be questions about this. right? Well, what about other theater chains? I mean, surely some of them pay more, pay less, or do this or do that. The second biggest chain is Cinemark Regal. Now, of course, Cinemark Regal, as we discussed earlier, a lot of financial trouble. They didn't get the benefit of getting meme stocked like AMC. One of the things that Adam Aron, CEO of AMC, brought up during the earnings call was to say that their average ticket price sold at AMC was substantially higher. It was. AMC's average ticket was $12.22 that we just saw for the quarter. Cinemark's average ticket sale price was like closer to $8. Now, there's a lot of things going on there, okay, because not as many people are going to see big headline movies. AMC has a much bigger hold on PLF screens, okay, and that's been a big issue. But one of the things that Adam Aron also brought up was saying that, well, our average rental domestically was 51%, which we just showed you how that number happened, right? Domestic, 51% was the rental. And they were saying Cinemark's rental back to theaters was closer to 58. Now I'm going to explain to folks why I don't always use Cinemark figures, and I don't know if Adam Aron, CEO of AMC, might have been trying to be a little bit clever to call Cinemark out to get them to actually be a little bit more clear in their earnings report for competitive sakes, but let me show you this. If you look here, same thing. This is Cinemark, the second biggest theater chain behind AMC. This is the same fourth quarter. I'm not going to linger on this long. I just want to show you. Look at admissions here, okay? This is admissions here, 304.6, and film rentals and advertising, 173. They also have a breakdown in here that shows U.S. versus international, and I don't know if it's anywhere close. But the bottom line is this. I want to call to people's attention. This is where Adam Aron was saying, well, look, they're paying 58% back to studios. So you see studios actually get more than 51, 52%, maybe 55 if you're a Spider-Man or a Top Gun or an Avatar 2, right? The problem with this is, just like with Disney, not every company wants to reveal too much specific information. Cinemark,
I smell some consolidation here. Is that where we're going with this?
there is film rentals and advertising. Look right there. So we're lumping the actual advertising budget of Cinemark in with the rentals they're paying back to the studio. So in other words, they're probably still paying back around the same 52% or so as AMC. Given the scope and scale of it's still a big outfit. It's still a big operation. And they're lumping in another 5 or 6% of that total 57, 58% is what they're spending on advertising budget. It doesn't have a straight line item just like rentals.
Well, and that would have to be the case because otherwise advertising would have no meaning whatsoever if it's not at least a few percentage points.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between that and AMC's line.
And that's why most people in the industry like to use the AMC stuff, just because of the clarity of it. So now you've seen kind of everybody's how this works. I've explained this in a video before, but I thought let's do it during a live show. We got a lot of new audience members out there, and there's still 950 of you watching us to go through financial reports like this. Is amazing.
Renegade on